for us how the Canadian government interpreted Mr. Trump's remarks today. Did you see a hardening or a softening of his resolve? Did you attribute the staggered delayed tariff on oil to anything in particular? Can you just interpret how you read his remarks?
Well, I must say, Tonda, and I mentioned that in my opening remarks, we have yet seen any formal decision-making done by President Trump, nor any specific details. And what we know and what we can make sure that we abide by is the first executive order of January 20th, relating to the fact that there was a process studying the trade relationship between Canada and the US, and of course Mexico and the US, and that the president was asking federal agencies to do that study for April 1st. We're participating in that study. Meanwhile, what we also knew is that there was a declaration, a tweet that President Trump made regarding fentanyl and the security of the northern border. We did the work. David and Mark are here to make sure that people around the Hill in Washington are aware, and we had a meeting with Tom Homan, the borders czar, where we exchange information. And so in that sense, we think that it is important work that we're doing. And we think that we're laying down the strong foundation at the beginning of the mandate of President Trump, because we know that there's a level of unpredictability that is linked to his administration. And by laying down the groundwork, now we will be able to build for the next 4 years.
And Chrystia Freeland today said that she would like Canada should put 100% tariffs on Tesla vehicles owned by Elon Musk and all U.S. alcohol imports. How do you respond to that? Do you think that is a wise move for the government to take in its responses to Trump?
Well, of course, Dominic LeBlanc, the Minister of Finance, is working along with us on a response plan. But right now, I won't comment on any declaration made by any candidates in the leadership race. We're focused here on having and developing strong ties with decision makers in Washington and doing the work that will ultimately result in protecting Canadians' interests.
Blanchfield, Politico.
Yeah, hi, ministers. You've spent a lot of time, invested a lot of time, obviously, in Washington, and then we're all waiting to hear what the president says. You said you've seen no written confirmation of orders. How do you feel about the fact that you have to sit around and watch TV or look at wire services or whatever to find out what's going on?
Well, Mike, I must say that we've seen the first administration of President Trump, and so we also went through the renegotiation of NAFTA, and so we have some experience. That is why, as a seasoned Canadian government, we know that we have to look at processes, and we have to make sure that we know exactly what is coming out, apart from the different declarations, but in terms of paperwork, executive orders signed, and that we need to rely on these processes. So that's why we continue to engage with so many people to make our case. And meanwhile, we will be ready day one should the president make his final decision.
Do you have any indication of when you're going to see this, or what it is you're looking for? Can you say anything about that?
Mike, like I said earlier this week when I was asked a similar question, I'm not in the headspace of President Trump. And that's why we will continue to work with people that work with him. And I think that the reaction towards our border plan, or the reaction regarding just the fact that there is a trade surplus when it comes to goods between Canada and US, if you don't take into account the question of energy. And when we present these arguments, people are reacting extremely positively.
Next question, Stephen Chase, Globe and Mail.
Hi, Stephen.
Hi, I hope you can hear me. I'm just wondering, does Mr. Trudeau had a chance to talk to Mr. Trump today? Because in the White House press conference, the White House spokesman said that Mr. Trudeau should be talking to Mr. Trump.
So I know that they've been in communication. This is a question that you should ask directly to the Prime Minister's office. The information I've had is the White House and the Prime Minister's office have been in contact indeed.
You mean today?
Including today indeed.
And will you announce tomorrow the retaliatory tariffs if this goes ahead? Or will there be a 2-week waiting period for consultations?
So what I said, and you heard Dominic LeBlanc saying it, and you've heard many of us saying it, the Prime Minister as well, should there be tariffs imposed, we will be ready day one. And we said also that there would be a first round of measures, a second round of measures, and a third round of measures. And so we will continue to make sure that we have a strong plan, and we'll keep ourselves also some leverage should there be, of course, tariffs imposed. We think that these would be, of course, unjustified tariffs, and that's why, of course, we would have a strong response.
Lynn Piper, Global.
Hi, ministers. Thanks for taking my questions. To start off, does the government believe that tariffs are 100% coming tomorrow, or is there any possibility we won't see tariffs come in place tomorrow?
Jillian, I wish I could answer that question, but the reality is we have yet seen a piece of paper declaring that, and of course, President Trump has made many different declarations, which we take very seriously, and that's why we're working on it and at it, and that's why also David and Mark are here in Washington, and I've been here also for 3 days. But fundamentally, this is a question that you should ask President Trump yourself.
I wish I could. And for my follow-up, Minister Miller, I'll direct this one directly to you. Former Foreign Affairs Minister Perrin Beatty says Canada is in a fact-free zone right now dealing with Trump on tariffs. Do you agree with that characterization, that facts are not important right now?
Well, look, Jillian, I think the reality of today's meetings are such that Canadians expect us to try. These tariffs could be crippling for our economy, just as our response will be damaging to the U.S. The U.S. has mentioned its concern with the border security, fentanyl, the immigration system. And so for Canadians, as frustrating as it can be seen that these things may be seen to be done in vain, we absolutely have to try. And I understand the sentiment that people feel that this might be useless. I think it isn't. The border, regardless of tariffs, is very important to our national security on both sides of the border. The U.S., and we've made this quite clear, over the last 10 years has been a net exporter of asylum seekers to Canada. Doesn't mean that we don't have our own challenges on our side. And if we want to make sure our southern border is properly secured, we need to work with the U.S. because there's 400,000 people that travel and transit across every day. Part of that makes our presence here important because we have to communicate that to the U.S., a country that is very focused on the Mexico border. But we also have to make clear that we have our interests to protect and that we're willing to work with the U.S. on what they see as some of the frustrations with our immigration system. And I've spent the last 18 months making sure that our immigration system is sustainable and is one that we can be proud of, while tightening some screws that we've had to do through a number of policy adjustments, including reimposition of visa on Mexico, changing some policies, making the system more rigorous. That is bearing fruit, but we have to prosecute that case with some folks that are threatening a tariff. So facts or fact-free, we certainly have to communicate reality to Americans and to President Trump and his administration.
Hi, ministers. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Sam.
At this point, do you believe this issue of 25% tariffs is actually about border concerns, migration, and fentanyl?
So we're asked a bit that question. You answered it, Mark.
We don't believe it is, Stephanie. We need to convince the Americans that it isn't. And so that's part of the reason we're here. We went into these meetings with no guarantees, and we certainly can't guarantee that to Canadians tonight, but I think Canadians would want us to make that effort. we know the challenges that we face with our southern border, with the U.S.'s northern border. It is a concern. We need to hear them out. But we also have to make it clear to the Americans that we have our challenges with the way they are working the border, and making sure that our case is being heard quite clearly from them. The facts, I believe, do set you free, and the facts that we expose to the Americans today, I think, are important in the discussions that Mr. Trump will be briefed on, notably the reduction of 89% of people moving from the north to the south today. I think that's very important and should register in people's minds, as well as the work that we need to do on a daily basis to make that border secure. I'll leave that security aspect up to David, though, for that part of the answer, Stephanie.
Go ahead, Dave.
Stephanie, I think that it's important for us to be here simply to share the extensive nature, the details of the plan that we're putting in force and have put in force on the border. And it's interesting talking to different legislators, different actors, as Melanie was mentioning, Minister Julie was saying, there are different folks we're interfacing with, and they don't know much about what we're doing on the border. And so the more time we spend encouraging them to understand and to bring them up to speed, the more beneficial it's becoming. The more they're saying, oh my gosh, we didn't realize. So these efforts we're making here are very much to sensitize, build relationship, and build a fact-based ground on which to grow. And so we think the last several days have been very successful in that regard.
Yeah, indeed.
I suppose for my follow-up, what is your understanding of what President Trump will, in fact, be briefed on? I understand you've spoken to Mr. Homan today, Mr. Rubio. What exactly is your understanding, or what's your sense of how much that you've communicated will actually be relayed to the president himself?
Well, we've presented definitely a lot of information to Tom Homan. I've had the chance with the Secretary of State to talk about a border plan, to exchange more information, to explain that less than 1% of the fentanyl that is coming into the U.S. comes from Canada. Less than 1% of illegal migrants that are coming into the U.S. are coming from Canada, that are on our side. Also, we have a fentanyl crisis, and we want to save lives together. And this is a common interest that we work together on this. And I think we got some positive feedback from different meetings we had. So I think it is worth it. I think that the president has had information in the past regarding our border plan. We'll be receiving more information based on all the meetings we've had, all of us.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. And for the record, you managed to answer all of the questions that were waiting.